All right, everybody, I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, we're going to be reviewing another Louis L'Amour Western, Reilly's Luck. I've got two different versions of it here. It came out in 1970. We always review the covers first, so let's talk about these covers. This one is the more modern cover. This is done by Gregory Manches. It's all right. I think Gregory Manches does a lot of the Louis L'Amour covers as of late. This one was done by an illustrator with the last name of Hall. I think it's pretty cool. The same illustrator also did all of these Colleen McCullough Masters of Rome series. So maybe you can kind of see the similarities there. Anyway, which cover do I like best? I like the old-timey original 1974 cover, or 1970 cover, rather than the updated Gregory Manches. No offense to Manches, because he's an awesome illustrator. I just like this one. Plus, the graphic design is better here. I mean, why have we got it all, we've got the cover wrapped in a, it's like focused, I mean, come on. Get it together. It's a great illustration. Maybe it would have won if you hadn't have shrunk it down. Make it the same size here. Okay, now they're about the same size. Come on, publishers. Pull your heads out. Okay, what is Reilly's Luck about? It's probably his most Dickensian. It's the closest to a Charles Dickens rags to riches story that, Louis L'Amour's ever done. It's also one of his more epic novels in scope, and I'm going to go over that in a bit because I don't think that's necessarily a good thing for Louis L'Amour to be doing massive epic in scope things. I think he's a much better storyteller when he focuses down onto the smaller stories that take place over a few days or maybe one summer or a month, rather than characters' entire lives, if that makes sense. Because we go from a 4-year-old boy to an adult man in this book, and everything that happens in his life, and it just goes by too quick, and we're going to get into some of that. What is this book about? So Louis L'Amour, when he wrote his son found the original one-paragraph outline for this book. Before Louis L'Amour even started writing, Louis L'Amour wrote this one-paragraph outline for this book. So I'm going to read it to you because I think it's fascinating, because it bears some resemblance to the final product, but not complete resemblance. So this is the original one-paragraph outline. It's going to be a fictional biography of a boy who becomes a man in the West, and then in the East, and then all over the world. The story of a boy who awakens in the night to hear a man and a woman arguing about him. The woman is his mother, and she does not want him. The man is not his father, but argues with the woman anyway. Finally, the man takes the boy into the country and leaves him with some people, or maybe with an old man, or maybe a kindly old drunk, or whatever, but the boy ends up reading and fishing and hunting. He returns to find the old man dead and rides the freight trains into the West. He becomes a foot racer, like an Olympian foot racer, or a fighter. Maybe he's a fist fighter, or maybe he's a gambler, or maybe he's a con man. But he goes from town to town, and then he cuts all ties with everybody, changes his name a lot, his style of dress, and leaves the women he has been living with heartbroken, and becomes a mining man working in the gold mines or something like that, and goes east. Make this a big, brawling, ribald novel of a man. Okay, so that's pretty much a very loose synopsis of what happens in here. Some of it's true. I mean, we do open up with a scene where the little boy is overhearing a conversation where his mother, who's a whore, doesn't want him around. It's like she's telling this other guy, "Get rid of my kid. If you can't get rid of him, just take him out into the barn and shoot him." I mean, she's really that cold-hearted. But the guy, instead, he takes him downstairs and introduces him to a gambler named Reilly. The kid's name is Val, and then he gets introduced to this gambler named Riley, and this gambler named Riley, for some reason, says, well, I'll take the kid around with me. I'll watch over him for the rest of his life. And by God, that's what happens. I mean, much like the novel Flint by Louis L'Amour or Brion by Louis L'Amour, it's kind of like a travelogue of this gambler, Riley, and this kid as they go from place to place to place to place over the span of like 30 years. I mean, they go everywhere. They go west, east, they go to Santa Fe, San Francisco, Arizona, Montana, Texas, New York City, Florida, Scotland, England, Austria, Australia, Italy. I mean, they go everywhere. In fact, and they meet princes and they gun duel with princes. I mean, it's much like, if you remember my review of The Walking Drum, that historical novel that Louis L'Amour wrote about the Spaniards, you know, and their quest across the world. This is just, and whereas there was no plot, it was just one sort of tiny adventure follow another tiny, everything gets wrapped up. You know, there's no real plot tying any of it together. It's just, yeah, we went here and did this. We went here and had this problem. We went here and had this problem. That's what the REILLY'S Luck is about. And what I meant earlier when I said Louis L'Amour does so much better, at least in my opinion, I like the Louis L'Amour stories that are focused in onto the events that happen just within 1 or 2 days. So we get a whole novel about something that's going on in people's lives that just takes a short span of, like, you know, 1 or 2 days or a month or maybe a summer or at most a year. You know, like if you read the book Hondo or the Kid Rodello, you know, Kid Rodello's just the story of a guy escaping from a prison and walking across the desert, and it only spans a few weeks. You know, Hondo is about, you know, the guy that rides in and saves the ranch, and it takes place over maybe a month at most over the summer. This takes place, we're following these people for 30 years, and I'm just telling you, they're crossing the Alps, and that's all the description we get. Louis L'Amour's like, oh, and then they crossed the Alps from Italy back into Switzerland, and now they're down at the border of, you know, Austria, Switzerland, and Italy, and I'm like, hey, I've been, one thing that was like, perked my interest is like, I've been there. I've been to St. Viet and Klagenfurt, which is down at the border of Austria, Switzerland, and Italy. I've been down there. I know what that's like. And when they're there, they meet a prince named Pavel, and there's some gun dueling and things like that with the prince. And then they have to flee back across the Alps. But it all takes place within the span of like 3 or 4 paragraphs. And I'm like, why are we rushing through this epic? Why is this only 200 pages when it should be a trilogy of 1,000-page novels each? It should be like 3,000 pages of all the adventures these guys go through. But man, just stuff is mentioned in passing. You know, it's like they go back west, and then in one paragraph, Val, he decides, I'm going to leave the gambler for a little bit, and I'm going to go live in New York City for a spell. And then that's all that happens. He's like, yeah, I lived in New York City for a spell. I worked for like a haberdashery or whatever it was. And then he comes back to the gambler, and that's only mentioned in like the span of like a paragraph. And I'm like, things are rushing by just too quick here. It's just too quick. So I remember reading this as a kid. Well, no, I mean, I must have read it as a kid because it's in my collection, and I read everything that Louis L'Amour wrote when I was a kid. I remembered absolutely nothing about this. It was clearly unmemorable then, and I just was not that super excited about it this time. There are some good passages here. This is probably, Louis L'Amour's best attempt to like have a deep exploration of men and relationships with women, and because there are some themes here, especially with the mom that wants to kill her son at the beginning, and then the different relationships that both Val and the gambler Riley get into. It's just one of the reason it's called REILLY'S Luck is because Riley always seems to have good luck, no matter what he wins, he's just a good gambler. And he just has good luck with everything. And that's the only reason it's called Reilly's Luck. It's more a story about the kid, Val. But, you know, what I'm saying is there was enough good Louis L'Amour stuff in here that it kept me going and it kept me interested. But I'm telling you, of all the Louis L'Amours that I've been rereading so far, this is probably going to be my least favorite. So I'll probably give it a 5 out of 10. It's just an average novel for me. And had it been written by anybody but Louis L'Amour, I might have just given it a 4 out of 10. I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. I'm giving it a straight average just because Louis L'Amour is my main man. And I love all of his stuff, you know, well, I love all of his stuff, but some of his stuff I'm just sort of, about. Anyway, Reilly's Luck by Louis L'Amour.